So when I got asked to do this speech today, I immediately said yes, because I feel so honored and so touched to have been asked to address you at this juncture, having gone through a similar journey as what you all have gone through. And I know that at this juncture, as you will be entering new worlds, you will be taking with you a suitcase full of process work skills and meta skills. But not just that. You will be taking you, the you that has been transformed by this amazing program. Because truly, as we know, this is a program about awakening to who you are, your deepest nature, and what the gifts are that you bring to our world exactly as you are. And I know, having gone through the program myself, that this really is an initiation. It is an initiation into a new way of seeing, a new way of being, a new way of relating with the flow of experiences in yourself and in others, and a new way of relating and working with world issues. I want to celebrate the invaluable skills and meta skills that you have learned in this program by sharing some examples of how these skills can be applied in some of the most intense and challenging situations. So I experienced the magic of process work for the first time in 2004 when I was living in Cape Town in South Africa. And it was my first exposure to process work. And at the time I was doing a lot of leadership development and diversity work with companies. And a colleague organized a 3-week workshop in Cape Town about this innovative approach to working with diversity called process work. And he invited somebody by the name of Max Schubach to come to South Africa. Okay. So this was a workshop with bankers and insurance agents, right? And you must picture a room full of about 100 people who work in banking and insurance. And Max opened the workshop by talking about quantum physics and how there is no objective reality. And he connected the findings of quantum physics to group dynamics and polarities in groups. And you could kind of feel the tension in the room, people going and why exactly is this dude talking to us about quantum physics? And are we really in the right room? Is this where we should be? But I had a very different experience. I was sitting in the front row, and there was an electrical current going up and down my body, like somebody had just plugged me into a socket. Because what happened in that moment for me is that the different rivers of my life flowed together. Because in my 20s I had been on a spiritual quest, and one of the approaches that I was very involved with was called Advaita, non-duality. And this whole notion that there is no objective reality was very much part of my quest. But then, when I moved to South Africa, I was working with diversity and social issues and leadership. And I never spoke about my spiritual quest. And suddenly, as Max opened this workshop, talking about quantum physics in a business context, it was like everything in me came together and I was completely electrified. A few days later into this workshop, I experienced for the first time the magic of process work, because Max showed me that the impossible was possible. At that time, I had been living in South Africa for about 6 years. And when it came to conversations about race, it was common to hear phrases like, as you hear here too, like, I don't see color. Or, apartheid is over, let's move on. Or, there's a black government in power now, so if there's problems, it's because of them, not us. That was not the type of conversation that was going to happen in front of Max. Max very skillfully and with great eldership, he opened the role, he stepped into the role of white superiority. And he spoke both about the privilege as well as the deep shame and embarrassment. And he said things like, I feel so deeply ashamed and I hate myself for having these racist thoughts and feelings, but I do. And as if he flipped a magical switch, white South Africans started flocking to the front of the room and started owning their racism. Something I had never before, it even gives me the chills talking about it now, I had never before seen that in South Africa. And white people were crying about their racism. And these, you could feel, were genuine tears. And for me, I felt that I had witnessed not therapy, not group process, but magic. And a few years later, in the third year of my process work studies here, just after a residential and group process, I had a chance personally to taste the magic of process work. I was back in Cape Town and I got asked to facilitate a diversity workshop with a senior team of bankers. And just before the workshop, I found out that half of the people I would be facilitating had been part of the military intelligence of the apartheid government. So, personally, having grown up in Amsterdam as part of a community of Holocaust survivors and the children of Holocaust survivors, this hit really close to home for me. Because I felt like I was going to work with a South African version of the Nazi Party. And also, at that time, there really was a big spirit of truth and reconciliation in South Africa. It was a time spirit. And I wanted to be part of that. And I remembered what Mandela had said. And I want to quote Mandela here. It's so beautiful and so touching what he said. He said, it was during those long and lonely years in prison that my hunger for the freedom of my own people became a hunger for the freedom of all people, white and black. I knew as well as I knew anything that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. And so I knew for me to go into this workshop and make that kind of contribution, I had to do a little bit of work on myself. Because I realized if I go in with an attitude of superiority to their superiority, they're going to eat me for breakfast. It's not going to work. And so for the 2-hour plane ride from Cape Town to Johannesburg, I had Arnie's books with me, and I did inner work. Finding the part of me that was a little bit like them, the part of me that could act superior, entitled, or even unconsciously racist. And by the time I arrived at my workshop, I was no longer filled with judgment, I was filled with curiosity. I wanted to meet the human being in the background of the oppressor. I wanted to, what we call, understand. And so I could tell that as I entered the workshop, they were expecting me to come in with some kind of moral superior stance, you know, like telling them how bad they were. But when I didn't, they started opening up to me. And during the breaks, we started having chats, and they started telling me about their childhood experiences. And a connection started to form. And then on the second day of the workshop, we were sitting in a circle for a team conversation, and no one was talking. And this was not a sacred silence. You could cut the tension with a knife. And then someone spoke up and said, you know, we just have so many demons in our past. And it was what we call in process work a hotspot. And the tension increased immediately. And of course, I had just had this amazing residency, and I had learned about references from the past. And that when people reference the past, something of that past is present now. And I had also learned about what we call weather reporting, naming what we sense in the atmosphere. So I just said, you know, I just get this feeling that the demons are with us right here, right now. Even more tension in the room. Silence. And I was just like, well, gotta hold the silence, right? And then suddenly next to me, out of the blue, a man broke down. And he said, my demons are with me always. I have nightmares every night. And for the first time in his life, he started speaking about the atrocities he had committed in Angola and during apartheid. And it led to a domino effect. One of the other, these men started speaking about things they had done during apartheid and owning up to it. And then there was a black woman in the group who started speaking about her experiences of the violence of white policemen going into townships and what it had taken for her to overcome her hatred of white people. And both sides heard each other. And for a moment in this bank with bankers, we had like a mini Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and we had a moment of unity. And afterwards, the black woman came up to me and she said, I don't know who did this, who made this conversation possible, whether it was the facilitator, the team, or God. The truth was, it really was the magic of applying process work that had created the environment where this was made possible. All those amazing skills we've learned, doing inner work, picking up the other in ourselves, changing our inner state before going into a workshop, holding hotspots with the right meta skills, naming the atmosphere. All of this is what enables us to go out into different worlds and allow for something bigger to move through us and for the magic to happen. And so in our checkout, one of the senior military intelligence guys, he said to me before the workshop, I did a full background check on you. All right, everything okay? He said, yes, everything okay. I just want to say, I never thought I'd open up to a woman from Holland wearing strange clothes. You can see, I'm still the same. These days, my work is not so much focused on the business world, but on my private practice, working with a different kind of diversity. Diversity in sexual orientation, diversity in relationship styles and configurations, the diversity in different sexual practices and preferences, and different gender identities. And this for me is the magical power of process work. That its magic can be applied to every realm of our lives. And so I'd like to end with a quote from my first spiritual teacher, a woman named Etty Hillesum. I never met Etty because she was killed in Auschwitz when she was 29 years old. But her writings, her journals came out, were published when I was 15. And she describes beautifully what we in process work call the essence level, and how she was living from that essence place in the midst of facing annihilation. And of course, this quote is dated. She talks about God, not goddess, because this was written in the 1940s while she was living in Amsterdam under Nazi occupation. And for me, with this quote, she captures the essence of process work. And on the days when I feel most in touch and most guided by that essence level, this is what it feels like. This is Etty speaking. Truly, my life is a long listening to myself and to others and to God. And if I say that I listen, it is really God who listens inside me. The most essential and the deepest in me, listening to the most essential and deepest in others. God to God. This is the place from which magic can happen. by listening and following the deepest parts of ourselves and relating to others from that place, allowing them to connect to their deepest natures. And I know that as graduates, this is the fire of initiation you have walked through. And I know that each of you, by following your own unique natures, you will bring your own version of process work magic into the world. Congratulations.